Can you be divorced and Christian at the same time? What about if you get divorced, can you get remarried without committing adultery according to what Jesus says? What if your spouse cheats on you and there's infidelity and adultery in the relationship? Well, all these questions and more are exactly what we are talking about this week. Kindred UMC live show features adults discussing adult topics, occasionally with adult language. It may not be suitable for young viewers. Please use discretion before watching.
Hello all! Welcome once again to the pre-recorded Kindred UMC live show, not coming to you live, but coming to you instead pre-recorded from my front room, aka Kindred Studio A. My name is Chris Hayden. I'm the pastor of Kindred UMC.
My name is Ryan Gondor. I am a member of Kindred UMC.
And I'm Adam. I'm just a random dude that pulled off the street.
Looks like it too.
We had, whatever. We had a joke about like, maybe we could just get a homeless guy off the street. We'll just pull a
We
rando.
still could.
Yeah, I mean, you know.
He still very well could.
You guys are keeping it going, huh?
We're trying.
It's good.
We are continuing our discussion about the Bible and sex stuff in a series I'm calling Sex and Stuff. And we are talking this week about adultery, and aka infidelity. And the Bible actually has a lot of things to say about it, and that's why I have my iPad instead of my actual, like, the Bible I usually use.
Just footnotes?
Because, yeah, there were, like, lots of texts that I thought we could just start off by just reading through some of them. Spoiler alert, the Bible's not into it. So here we go. This is from Hebrews 13, verse 4. Let marriage be held in honor by all, and let the marriage bed be kept undefiled, for God will judge the sexually immoral and adulterers. Matthew chapter 5, 27 and 28. You have heard that it was said, this is Jesus speaking, you shall not commit adultery, but I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Anyone, this is Luke 16, verse 18. Anyone who divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery, and whoever marries a woman divorced from her husband commits adultery. And then the classic from the Ten Commandments themselves, Exodus chapter 20, verse 14, you shall not commit adultery. So,
seems pretty clear.
Yeah, it's pretty clear, cut and dry. So, first of all, let's just talk about so a lot of the texts that Jesus says when in the Gospels, when he talks about adultery, he says things like, hey, if you get divorced and you get remarried, that's adultery, buddy. We can be very legalistic about that and be like, oh no, because my wife is my second wife.
Nice.
And we can get very legalistic about that and be like, well, I'm not allowed to now be in heaven, or whatever, But there is something else going on. When Jesus makes those types of like hyperbolic statements, he also makes another statement about like whoever doesn't hate their mother and father. He also makes other statements about like oh gosh, I can't quote them. He makes a lot of hyperbolic statements, like see Sermon on the Mount for references. The point that Jesus, I think, is trying to make in those statements, before we get too legalistic, is that he's up against very legalistic, you better act the right way kind of people, and he's making a point to them about, hey man, none of us can live up to this standard. Like, you say this, but like, hey man, have you ever looked at a woman and been like, wow, she's hot? Yeah, well, you're sinning too. Like, it's more that kind of a thing.
One of my friends actually today was talking to me about that. He was having a rough day, and he was just saying how hard it is to be a Christian, right? And he was just bawling his eyes out. He was upset. And I asked him, I was like, what was wrong? And he said that there's just so many guidelines to being a good Christian. I don't know if I am one, he was just saying that this type of perfection, God can only achieve, but
that's kind of the whole idea.
It's put on us to achieve as well, right? Or at least strive to achieve.
Yeah, no, strive is the thing. It's the idea of being
if the fact that he's struggling with that means he is a good Christian.
Yeah,
Say that
and
right now.
he's a
The
fantastic
fact
person.
that he is
Great
struggling
dude.
that deep into that quandrum is beautiful because that means he's a great Christian.
Nice word.
Deep, yes, thank you.
I like my
Nice
good
vocabulary.
I like my good vocab.
No, but the whole path of Jesus, this like super thin, knife edge thin, narrow path, is nobody like us is ever gonna get it. We're never gonna meet it.
We can try.
Damn
That's
hard though.
And that's the point that Jesus is trying to make. You have to put all those statements that Jesus makes in the Gospels in context. He's preaching in front of Pharisees and Sadducees, who are the people who have said, you're behaving like a monster, and that's why you owe us money and resource and like they're. And so Jesus isn't talking to the people who are like struggling and like trying to do right. He's talking to the people who are self-righteous. He's preaching at them on behalf of the people who are struggling. And so many times now, it gets reversed in the modern church, especially the modern American church. The modern American church likes to say, and like they kind of become pharisaical about it. So Jesus is taking people who are being legalistic and he's saying, hey man, you can't live up to this standard either. And even if you say you can live up to it, well then how about this? Even if you look at a woman and then you've got lust in your heart. Like that's a better way to read like emphasizing the right words is a better way to read that. And instead the church has become a place where we go like, if you ever look at a woman with lust in your heart, then you have committed sin. So gouge out your eyes. You know, like, and we become pharisaical again. You know, like it's a tendency.
Devolving.
Yeah. So like to your friend, I would say like, hey man, Jesus would have been hanging out with you at your house.
Yeah.
Like he would have come to you and been like, hey man, don't sweat that stuff. Like they're trying to control you. Don't let them control you. I think that's what he would rather be saying. He's like, everybody, they're focused on external stuff. I'm trying to get people back into their hearts, back into the authenticity of like what it really means to follow Yahweh, who he would have called his father.
And
you know?
and you can tell like this friend of mine, he goes to church every Sunday. He goes to one of those super loud
The giant
yeah
churches?
yeah the huge churches that you walk
Big
in.
box
There's
noms.
Basically.
Yeah.
And you can tell that
Which
just
can be very fun, by the way.
yeah, but you
They
can tell
put
it
on a
carries a
good show.
lot of weight. You can tell
Yeah.
like he gets out and he's carrying a lot of weight versus like getting out and feeling, lighter, so to speak.
And there is something to be said for like sometimes the Spirit convicts, and you feel shame and you should address that shame because you've done something that you know is wrong. I don't like it when external sources
Force it upon you.
Yeah, right. Like when we get oppressive about and churches, by and large, and this is a generalized statement. So like if you're living in an exception, then by all means, like be that. But by and large, the church in the States has, generally speaking, been a little more has erred on the side of oppression. In my experience, we have tended to be much more controlling and demanding than we have been like setting people free and actually healing. So all right, so let me just transition because I want to talk specifically about adultery and infidelity. I myself have experienced that. I was married. I am currently married. And I was married before. I was married to another person who ended the relationship by cheating on me. And so there is a lot of self-righteousness in that.
What was her ethnicity?
Lebanese. This is, by the way,
He's Lebanese.
This is why me and Ryan are so. We have both married and divorced and been cheated on by Lebanese women.
He's American though. I am Lebanese.
Yeah, that's the funny part. You're the other
It's
side
a
of the
little
coin.
close to home, but yeah. So I've been in the same situation. I was married for almost 4.5 years, and the marriage ended on the basis of infidelity. Now, when I say that, I did a whole lot of healing on that, and I think I'm in 1,000 times better place right now.
And I met you way after that, and even from the day I first met you to now, I would say there's also a lot of
Yeah.
healing progress. You become like much more mature, much more healthy around that idea.
And you start understanding, there's so many different facets to a relationship ending. It's not, obviously the core root of it in this case, especially for the topic that we're discussing, is infidelity, but there's so many things that surround it, that lead up to it, that as individuals going into it, or, deciding to end the marriage or what have you, you have to come to a realization that there's roles to be played by either party.
Yeah.
And, whether you're the person who's cheated on, whether you cheated on the person, or whether both of you cheated on each other. I mean, in my case, I was cheated on, so it was tough. But at the same time, it was a big learning experience for me, because at the beginning you start thinking, oh, that person, right? But as you start to heal,
that person.
so you start having like an accusatory tone, right? You're basically accusing the other party of infidelity,
I see
and
what you mean.
how could you? You're awful. This, that. But as time progresses, you move from that tone to more of like a self exploration, where you start looking at, okay, well, what were the things that I fell short on in certain aspects, right? Not blaming yourself at all, but just looking at it in like a big picture, right? And for me, the beauty of it was that person wasn't for me. And I knew that before the marriage ended. I knew that person wasn't for me. I just didn't do anything about it. So, and that's one thing over the past, what has it been? 4 years almost? Yeah, that I've been working on, so.
I had a similar experience. I also had the feeling of like, oh no, I've made a terrible choice. I shouldn't have done this. But I was still like committed to, I'll do everything I can to make it work. And then ultimately, and this perspective came years after.
You meant committed to whatever it takes to make it work.
Yeah.
Prior to the infidelity.
Right.
Yeah.
This was just when I knew things were like, we're not connecting. This is like, she's not the right person for me. I'm not the right person for her. But I was still kind of like in it, because I was taught by the church and growing up, like, once you commit, you commit, And I think there's a lot of value to that. I'm not trying to, poo-poo that or like throw it out. Like, I think that's a good mindset to have when you're entering into a marriage relationship. But it became pretty clear pretty quick, like, oh no, something's going very wrong here. And I was still like, but the thing that I learned that was crazy about it is like, I swear I did my absolute best to make that work, and it wasn't enough. And that was part of,
and that's okay.
That was part of the hurt of the infidelity, was the like, hey man, I'm doing my best here. And to kind of accept the fact that, if I don't have control over the other person. Right. I only have control over what I do and how I speak and all that.
Exactly. If your best isn't good enough for the other person, then the other person isn't for you. It's plain and simple. I've been in relationships even after my divorce where, I thought I've done my absolute best to maintain at least a level playing ground, if not so, like, I did more than necessary, but unfortunately it just wasn't reciprocated, and that's no one's fault at the end of the day. I mean, it's, you put yourself in a position where you think, okay, what I'm doing is going to help this relationship, and if it doesn't, then it wasn't meant to be. I mean, I'm a firm believer in whether or not things are meant to be or not meant to be, right? And if you genuinely believe that you tried and exhausted all options to try and make a relationship work and it didn't work, then so be it.
Yeah. Well, and I agree with you, and it also isn't that easy when it's much harder to do in the moment.
Yeah. Oh, trust me.
Yeah. So I'm curious, Adam, as a younger guy who's never been married.
Correct.
like, so what's your, I don't know, what's your just general response to hearing all this? What's your general approach to, as someone who's kind of on the front side
Right.
of
The front
getting
end
into a
rather than the back
Weren't
end.
you about to get married in Vegas? No, I'm kidding.
We were all at a bachelor party in Vegas, which was quite
fun.
nice. Shout out to Preston, who is not here because he's doing wedding stuff.
Yeah. No, he's busy.
Yeah.
I have to run the sound for that. But it's gonna be great.
What's your take on all? What's your just general sense of it?
Well, I'm sort of similar to you. You said something before of like you were kind of taught and raised of like when you commit, you commit, and that's sort of my mindset and everything. But like also with like in regards to relationships, it's a heavy thing where it's like no, once I choose you, like I'm gonna go with that. Then I'm hearing more at this point like if it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. Like you start seeing like. Because now, like, I look at it from a perspective of, I'm in the natal stage of relationships. I'm nowhere near close to marriage, and I won't be for a long time. And I'm fine with that. That's great.
But you don't even know, right? I mean, you make
true.
that statement not knowing what the future holds.
This is
so
fair. I have complete unknown, infinite darkness of who knows what's next. But the universe is ever expansive. But
All things are possible.
all things are in fact
In
possible.
an infinite multiverse, all things are possible.
Yes. No, but I still have those like those same feelings of it's a good idea to even just in the natal stage of a relationship to look like, is this going to be the right person for me? Is this going to fit right? Will this work? Like if we give each other our best, is that good enough for each other? Can we work and make a collective strength and all that stuff? And that goes into marriage and goes into that kind of very traditional and impactful connection between two people of like, no, we're gonna live life together and like do this.
Yeah.
And I'm probably coming from more of an older mindset, but in a new age, and it's very difficult to do that because a lot of people in my age are not like that.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to date people when it's not working because I'm so old in my mind.
A lot. Like I had a hard. I remember. So when I first started dating my wife, who grew up Catholic and was like pretty well and over the church, you know, and like on our first date, I had to say,
Shout out to Catholics.
I'm gonna be a pastor. Is that gonna be a problem? You know, like I had to label it.
Oh yeah.
Because I don't want to start going down this road if that's a deal breaker. You know. But that lesson, like saying that and talking that way, came from my broken relationships. Like I learned that lesson from being divorced and being broken up. Well, actually, I've never been broken up with technically. I was always had to be the one to
Oh wow.
to pull the trigger even when I didn't want to. I always had to be the one to put the relationship down. Like it sucks. I don't recommend it. I would recommend being broken up with over having to break up with somebody you don't want to break up with.
Wholeheartedly. Well, I agree and I disagree. As somebody
It's been both for me.
as somebody that just ended something, and was the person that ended that thing, it was interesting. You know what I mean? Because it's like you end it knowing that, okay, the last word was given by you, and then you question whether or not, at least for me, this is my train of thought, whether or not you did the right thing. And this kind of went back to even
I think that is a pretty universal human. Like, that's a normal thing that people feel.
Even when I found out about, the infidelity that was going on with my ex-wife years and years ago, I said, I don't want any more of this. This is it. I'm gone. Stay here. Do whatever you got to do. Give each other a few weeks. Let's sort out the paperwork and do all that stuff. That was tough. But at the same time, self-actualization, self-worth, there's so much that goes into making those decisions to where you know that if you continue down this path with this person that is just not for you, it's going to lead to tougher and tougher times for you, emotionally, mentally. So you really have to make that stance and know what your life is worth. There's this saying where a guy goes up to this person and says, I'll give you $10 million and you have one day to live and one day to spend it. Would you take it? What do you think the person said? Absolutely not. I want the rest of my life. So how much is the rest of your life worth? How much is your time worth? And don't you want to spend that time with someone that's appreciative of it, appreciative of the fact that you're in their lives? And
reciprocation.
Yeah. They always say it's 100-100, right?
Yeah.
You both have to give in.
It's not 50-50.
Mm-mm.
It's,
yeah.
Those were some of the lessons that I that I learned a lot after my divorce. And so there's something. So I'll say this: there's something about being cheated on. I had a clear out.
Yeah.
I had a clear out that I could just say to everyone who knew us. And I was a youth director. I was a worship director in a church. I was a staff member. I was a part of a community. Everyone knew me and my wife. Everyone knew us, all of that. And in fact, I accidentally put it on Facebook. It's a long story, but just trust me, it was an accident. I switched a setting and it broadcast to everyone that my marriage had ended. And I did not mean to do that.
Yeah, but you didn't. To clarify for everybody listening, you did not put that my marriage ended due to infidelity.
No, not that.
Just that it ended.
Basically, it was I changed my relationship status
to single.
And my relationship status was private, but when you change it, it makes it public. And so I did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of did it as like a self-care kind of like, all right,
it's real.
I'm officially changing my status,
Yeah.
And then it broadcast to everyone. Chris Hayden has changed his relationship status from married to single. And I started getting phone calls.
Just DMs. Everyone was sliding in your DMs.
I was like, that went public? Oh no, so.
That must have been terrifying.
It was, it was like, I felt humiliated, but also in hindsight, it was kind of like, hey man, at least it's out there now. At least I don't have to go around telling everybody.
Yeah, see, that is, what you did is very, very difficult. Not a lot of people will do. I remember when I went through my my divorce, it was a mystery to so many people. I had uncles calling me 6 months later saying, "Hey, you still married?" I'm like, "No, I'm not married." So
I can see that for some reason my kid stopped.
But
hopefully you're picking me up.
Yeah, I think I am.
All right, I think it's a battery problem.
I think the way you did it was pretty good.
Anyway, the point I want to make is I learned a lot in spite of having the ability to pass the buck.
Mm-hmm.
It was my willingness to actually engage in, okay, what do I own in this?
Mm-hmm.
What is God teaching me in this? How is God in even this? And it turned out to be one of the most important actual learning experiences of my life, and it set me up to actually be in a healthy relationship with my current wife. So we're out of time. I know there's a lot more to say about this.
One thing before we go, when I went through my divorce, I went through counseling, I went through Bible studies, I went through discipleships, and that's one of the reasons why I converted to Christianity. And I was actually baptized in this very same room.
Where we are recording currently.
Yeah, so it was very interesting, and for me, it was a positive journey.
Yeah. That's the metaphor,
Yeah.
Like death leads to resurrection. That's the whole point, It can. It doesn't always. Sometimes it's devastating, but it can. When we
Disclaimer: we didn't have kids, so yeah, disclaimer.
Yeah, that does help. It does help that we didn't have kids either. So if you're out there and you're struggling, take hope and feel free to reach out if you need help.
Mm-hmm.
Kindred UMC. Also, by the way, this is coming out much later, but we will be at Oviedo Brewing Company this Thursday for our live show. And if you're in the area in Oviedo, Florida, then come on out and see us. So, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace.
Wild.
I think that went pretty well.